Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Here's your host, Stacey Jones.
Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I'm Stacey Jones, and I'm so happy to be here with you all today, and I want to give a very warm welcome to John Hinson. John is the Editorial Director at Spotlight Branding, a content marketing company that specializes in helping solopreneur and small firms generate more referrals and get their targeted consumers to stay engaged. With almost a decade of experience, John excels in collaborating with legal and financial professionals to help grow their firms while handling the challenges of SEO. As an author of over 24 books and his role as a host of two popular industry podcasts, Law Firm Marketing Minute and Center Stage, John has an unwavering commitment to education and community building and aims to provide his audience with new tools and perspectives to help them succeed, whether as a guest on a podcast, writing an article, speaking at a conference, or running a workshop. Today, John and I are going to be chatting about how to have your business position itself as an expert and stand out in a crowded marketplace. We'll learn what works from John's perspective, what should be avoided, and how some businesses and individuals just miss the mark. John, welcome. So happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, what I always love doing, starting off, is having you tell us, how did you get here today? Is this what you always thought you were going to be doing?
Oh, God, no. My initial goal was to teach like writing and composition, probably at like community college level. I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed teaching, and all of that. But when grad school came and went, no one wanted to hire me for that position. I not smartly didn't really have a backup plan. I was just super confident that like, oh man, I'm doing so well, someone's going to definitely want to hire me. And that wasn't the case. So I moved out to the Charlotte, North Carolina area, got a job as a copywriter for a big corporation. So I thought, all right, this is my big boy job. I got a nice corporate job. I'm just going to 9 to 5 it for my entire career. And that's fine. 10 days in, they canceled my contract, and I was in a new city, didn't know anybody, didn't have any clue what I was going to do. And then I happened across this company. They needed a social media manager. I thought, I know social media. I can do this for a few weeks, for a few months, until I can finally find my actual career. 8 years later, I am still here with the same company. I have kind of just done just about everything there is to do here. And now I get to, I guess, for all of that work, I get to do fun things like this. I get to go to conferences and speak. And I manage our media section called Spotlight Insider at spotlightinsider.com, where there's just new articles, new podcasts going up every day. And it's just all around helping business owners just kind of grow their firm with marketing or tech advice, money advice, all that kind of stuff. We also have a big focus on mental health, which at least in our industry, which we focus mostly on solo and small law firms, just the mental health aspect is just not talked about enough, but there's a huge, need for it there. And so I particularly enjoy that section of it. But, the advice that we have and the tips that we have is really helpful for any other industry as well.
That's awesome. And I think there's so many people listening to you today that are saying, I set off in college to do something thinking that I was going to graduate. And I too landed in what actually worked out to be the best thing ever.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, that's, to get off of like the business related, conversation. I mean, that was one of the things that I really learned growing up, especially in my 20s, where it's just like, no matter how much I really planned my life out, it never turned out the way that I expected to, but that wasn't always necessarily a bad thing.
I think most of us have found that to be very true. So when you're working with these law firm professionals who have planned their lives out exactly how they planned them to be, right? Those are people who they made a plan, they went to school, they went to grad school, they got to, and they passed the bar, they went beyond, and now they're lugging it out. So when you're working with them, what's the first thing that you do? Because it's going to apply to any industry in general. How do you help them figure out what their message is to tell and what their differentiator is?
The first thing really is about changing this narrative that they have been taught. So many marketers in our industry the first thing that they tell these lawyers is that you got to get on Google. You got to make sure you're on page one of a Google search, and it's all SEO. And that isn't necessarily how it has to be. They've been fed in that, and I'm sure it's like this for other industries, but they're fed this narrative that everything you do has to be focused with this end goal being you have to have success on Google. And what that has led to is this overall negative view towards marketers in the marketing industry. We're all seen as kind of snake oil salesmen. Oh, we promise you we're going to get you all these leads. No one really believes us. And so what we've tried to do with Spotlight Branding is provide a different way of doing it, where we're focusing on helping generate referrals, focusing on helping them stay top of mind with their audience, so that the referrals that they get, they're going to convert those because they have a great website, they have a great foundational presence that makes them look like the expert. And then that way they're not having to spend thousands of dollars a month trying to compete for one of 10 spots on page one of a Google search with all of the other firms that are trying to compete for that same real estate.
And there is limited real estate there. There's not a whole lot that is there to go around. But also a lot of your clients are not necessarily looking at the national stage. And so you're helping them more so in their local communities too.
Yeah. And even, and unless you're in like a really, really, really small market, like a 40,000 person town, maybe you don't have this issue. But if you're in a big city, I mean, even us in Charlotte, bigger markets, your Dallases, Miami's, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago's, even stuff in between, there are 30, 40, 50 other firms, maybe even more, hundreds, who are doing the exact same thing. And you're all trying to compete for that page one. Because, there was a stat I saw that only 0.4% of Google searches go over to page two. And the pages that are on page one, their lifespan or their lifetime existence is 2 years old. So you're not going to get immediate results, and two, those results are not going to be guaranteed. And yet you're spending thousands of dollars a month to get there, with the hope of getting there that's not guaranteed. And there's just such a small real estate. And if Google changes their algorithm overnight, all that hard work and all that money's down the toilet. And so that's why we try to kind of refocus that to where you build this momentum with a good content strategy. You stay consistent, you stay top of mind with your audience, with the referrals that are going to come in, that you're not going out and hunting and trying to bring in, but just referrals that are coming in from other lawyers that or past clients or whoever. And you're nurturing them and you're getting them to convert faster, and they're not balking at price or anything like that, like a Google lead probably would. And it just makes your marketing work that much better, and it makes it that much more efficient.
Yeah. And so with that, I mean, your approach, and I'm a content marketer at heart. We do so much with content marketing. I mean, really what my whole job is I get brands into other people's content, but it's all about content, because we work and do product placement as an example, or celebrity and influencers, and we're creating branded opportunities within any of those three realms of content. And the benefit of it is, just like our blogs that we do or this podcast, we're creating something that has a life longer than just paying for Google AdWords, basically. So your options are, you're either on the top part of the fold of the page one, and all that's paid advertising space by Google. And each time you're paying your $2.95, $3.95, $12.95, whatever it is, the highest bidder is willing to pay, and right underneath you. Or you're creating content that is going to hopefully get onto that page one, in this case, or is going to at least give you opportunities to take the content, put it in your newsletter, put it in other platforms, use it in your social media, and really create a lifeline for your business that will keep on going for years to come. And with an example of our agency, I started doing blogging back in 2012. And so we have over 1,600 blogs now. And with that, those blogs, some of them have been seen very few times. They haven't really kicked off, but some of them have been seen tens or hundreds of thousands of times. And it's all just an effect of building our expertise as an agency and our positioning for people. And that's what you do so well for other people. So you've talked to someone, You've learned that there is something that they have a story. How do you start?
Yeah.
What's your next step there?
Yeah, it's all about really honing in that message and what do they really want to be known for? Because one of the things that I've started talking about recently, having too many clients and having too many referrals or too many leads coming in is still technically a marketing problem. It's a good marketing problem to have, but it is still something that you can work to address. Because I'll have these conversations with lawyers and they find out we're a marketing company and maybe they're just trying to like let us down easy or something. But a lot of times I'll hear, oh, I have way too much business. I have more, referrals in business than I know what to do with. And there's still a marketing problem there because chances are the leads that you're getting or the referrals that you're getting, not all of them are the right fit. And so if you're referring out more cases than you're taking on, or you're rejecting a lot of leads because they're not qualified, there's still a marketing problem there. And so there's an opportunity, and what we really try to do is say, hey, what do you really want to focus on? And it doesn't have to be just one practice area. You can drill down even farther than that. You can have one element within a practice area. So for example, criminal defense, a lot of law firms will do multiple practice areas. I know some will do like criminal defense, family, and personal injury. All right, cool. You want to just focus on criminal defense? Great. What more? Take another step down, because there's so many different areas of criminal defense. You got traffic tickets, DUIs, assaults, murders, abuse, whatever, all that. Oh, you just want to handle DUIs. You want to be the DUI lawyer in your city? Cool. Let's create content, blog articles, videos, social media posts all around what people need to know about DUIs. What happens at a traffic stop? What happens if you do get arrested? Or what happens if a police officer suspects you of drinking? What are your rights in that case? There's so many different questions and so many different content pieces around that. You can go for months and months and years just creating content around that. And you do it consistently. People will start to see you as the expert. You brought up that point a couple of minutes ago, just of how you do what you do for your audience. And that's that strategy, right? You've been blogging for all these years. People go to you for that branding expertise because that's how you've positioned yourself. It works the same way with other industries as well. You focus in on the kinds of work that you specifically want to do. You do it consistently, and you get out in front of your audience, you stay top of mind. That's how they're going to see you. Those are the kinds of referrals that they're going to send you, and those are the kinds of leads that are going to come in.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is you are in control of your positioning. So if there is a very target niche that you want to be going after, or if there's work you don't want to be doing, you can set your content up to do exactly that, because the story you're telling is the story that people are going to hear, understand, interpret, and act on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's so important about it is you tell the story, right? Like, you are not the hero, but your client is the hero. So position it that way. You're the guide, right? You are the Gandalf, the Yoda of the story, and your client, your audience, they are the Frodo or the Luke Skywalker, whatever. They're the hero, and you're there to help them overcome whatever obstacle or antagonist that they are facing. And you position it like that, to where it's like, here, I am here to help you. It's not, hey, call us, because that's going to turn people off. But you're saying, here's what needs to happen. Here's what happens in this situation. Here's how we help. And that's how they begin to see you. That's how they build that trust. Because especially in the legal industry, no one trusts a lawyer. So that's an additional extra hurdle to climb. But you do that, and you position that message that way, and it really does make a lot of difference.
And so are there any platforms that you think are the best to do this? Is blogging the number one go-to for you? Is podcasting? What is it that you suggest?
So I kind of break it down into two different areas. You have kind of the content types, and then you actually have the vehicles that get that content out. And so content types, blogging is still pretty powerful. Video for sure is becoming more and more important, but then also podcasting has really increased in popularity. And a law firm can have a really good podcast, because I know lawyers specifically, they like to get super deep into the weeds on concepts. They want to make sure that they cover every single aspect of a topic that they're trying to talk about. And a podcast is a good outlet to do that. You can go for 20, 30 minutes on a topic and cover the things that just a blog post has no business having, right? Because people aren't going to sit there and read a 10,000 word blog post and try to cover it. They're going to glaze over. They're going to be out after 3 paragraphs. So your blogs are still important, though. Videos, like I said, is important, and podcasts is important. But when it comes to the vehicles, social media is becoming very, very important. And also, I still am a huge believer in email. And your blogs and your videos are great content to put in your email, in an email newsletter. And you only have to send that monthly, and it creates a ton of difference. Like our clients specifically, I've heard on several occasions, every newsletter they send every month, they're getting multiple referrals, multiple requests for repeat business just from that email, because that lawyer's just sending out, a featured piece of content. The blog title's the subject line. People are seeing it in their inbox. They're reminded, oh, this is that firm. This is what they do. I didn't realize they did that too. Let me call them back up because I need this. Or I know someone who's going through this. I'm going to forward this on to them, right? And then on the social media side, this very well. Everybody's on social media. That's where everybody's hanging out. It also is a great place for you to control your story and control where you show up. And as Instagram Reels or TikTok become more and more and more mainstream, more and more popular, the video content that you're putting out there becomes that much more important as a tool for you to tell that story.
And so what are some of the mistakes that people make with this? So when you're starting working with them, is there something that they go to in general in one direction that's wrong? Is it that they want to talk for 3 hours on a podcast? Or
the nice thing about it is we create it all for them, so we don't let them make those mistakes anymore. But the one thing that I see kind of outside is that they still treat their social media timeline like a billboard. You drive around town, you see a billboard for a law firm. It's the same thing. It's got their phone number plastered on it. It's maybe got the lawyer's big face up there, and it's called the Legal Eagle, and that's it. Like, it's the same billboard in 20 different places around town. And they end up doing that same thing on social media. Every single post is just the same call to action. And you don't have to do that. You have so much control and ability to change your message and provide different resources and content. And just not enough people are taking advantage of that. And instead, they're turning off their audience, and people are just going to outright ignore them because everything's a money grab. Everything's just book a call with us here, book a call. And it gets annoying. People aren't going to listen to that. They're going to block, or they're going to hide or mute or whatever. And you're just not going to have any success with it.
And so what is the next step that you take with someone? So I know you all manufacture this yourself and you run the processes, but if someone else was doing this for themselves, how would you get them started?
Yeah, so I would tell them to create basically what we call a content loop. All right. And it's exactly how it sounds, right? So traditionally you have marketing funnels, and it's very A to B. You have people come in at the top of the funnel. They're very cold. Over time, they warm up. They get to the other end of the funnel where they are ideally warm, ready to make a buying decision. What we have seen is that 2 main issues. One, there's not enough action going on in the middle of the funnel, nurturing people. But at the same time, there's not anything going on for the people who go through the funnel all the way, whether they are a yes or a no or not right now. And so what a content loop does, it essentially closes that funnel up. So it becomes circular rather than just an A to B sort of thing. And you close that up with different content points and that consistency that I was talking about earlier, publishing a blog regularly, sending out an email newsletter regularly, posting on social media consistently, having a podcast, videos, all that kind of stuff. Those are your content loops. Those are the touch points that you're created. You are, quote unquote, keeping people in the loop. They're not going to forget you, no matter what's going on, because you're constantly showing up. And if you're providing value, you're not going to annoy people, right? Because that's what I hear oftentimes. It's like, well, if I post to social media every day, I'm going to annoy my audience. Oh, if I send them an email every month, that's going to annoy them. It only annoys them if you're not providing value or if the content that you're putting out is terrible. But if you're providing value and you're providing those resources to people, they're going to stick around. They're going to see what else you have and ways that you're helping everybody.
Right. I mean, people are on for using your social media as an example, not going to annoy them. It's not that you're littering an inbox for them. You might show up in their feed. Hopefully you're going to show up in their feed enough times that all of a sudden they're going to actually take notice and they're going to click on you. And then
Right.
Meta is going to allow more than 6% of the followers that you have to actually see your content as more and more people engage.
Exactly. Yes. And and here's the thing too, right? Like, obviously, especially in the industries that we work with, a lot of the subject matter is very heavy, and it's not necessarily something that people are going to engage with, right? Like, no one's going to publicly like a post or comment about something going on with divorce. I get that. But that's why balance is very important. Show your audience that you're just another business, that you are just human beings. You're making a living this way. Show some behind the scenes stuff. Show what it's like to be working in your firm. Show what you're doing out in the community, stuff like that, because people will gravitate towards that. They'll openly engage with that. And so when they start engaging with posts like that, those other posts will start to show up as well. Because that's, especially in the social media world, that's how those algorithms work. They'll say like, oh, this post is getting a lot of traction. This must be a really good page that people need to see. So they'll start showing more and more and more of that. And so that organic reach will expand a little bit more, as long as you are doing it consistently. And by consistently, I mean bare minimum, like 3 days a week, ideally every single day. But once a week is not going to cut it, but it's also not going to annoy people either.
No, I think the minimum is, I think in general, a 3-time posting that they're suggesting at this point, like at a core minimum, if you can get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it's all about systemization. You can build a quick ecosystem. And look, if posting every day to social media and sending out an email newsletter every month feels daunting, and I get for business owners who are trying to wear many hats, that can be very daunting. Start with one. Start with a monthly newsletter, pair that with a recent blog article. And that's it. You don't have to curate this giant email full of stuff. Have the blog article be the main piece of your email newsletter content, and use the title of the blog as the subject line. That's an easy trick that not a lot of business owners are taking advantage of, because if you're just putting your business's name in the subject line, that's not interesting. People have no reason to open it. But you put that blog title in the subject line, now people have a reason, like, oh, okay, this looks like it might be interesting. This might be for me. They're going to have more of a reason to open up that email. And that's what drives those referrals, because people now understand who you are and what you do. And it's making that connection for them way more than just Smith Law Firm August newsletter ever would.
And for all of those people who don't like to write, then they have the option of podcasting and turning all that content into written content afterwards.
Yeah. Whether you transcribe your recorded episode, one of the greatest tricks, honestly, it's the concept of content multiplication, right? So you can take something like this, where we are obviously recording a podcast. You and I are on video as well. You can take that video, publish it to YouTube, rip the audio, you have a podcast episode, transcribe the audio, you have a blog post. You have 3 different mediums for the same concept. And all of those mediums can then become content that you put in your email newsletter or post on social media. And it works because not everyone is going to see every single post. They may see the blog version of this, or they may see the video version of this. And then next week, when they come back around, they may see the blog version of the next episode that you did. And so it doesn't require you to create all this additional content. You're taking one piece of pillar content, is what we call it. You're disseminating it out to different various formats. You're chopping it up and you're putting it out all over the place. And it's not any extra work on your end.
And so for those who are coming to you for help, you find that, there's certain people who would prefer a written strategy versus one that's more podcast based. Are there people who are nervous about, hosting a podcast? Or how do you kind of figure that out for them?
Right. Well, for us, our industry is still very old fashioned. They're in a lot of ways slow to adopt a lot of the new stuff. Very, very aware of kind of what they put their name on, also the time commitment of it as well. So they tend to stick with what they know. A lot of them do the blogging and the email, which is great because that still works. Like I said, you can send out a monthly email newsletter and still get great results from that. I do notice that the younger law firms, they are more open to the video, they're more open to the podcasting. I think there is, and I think, you can speak to this as well. The concept of running a podcast isn't as complex as maybe people might think it is. At the bare minimum, and you and I probably have a little bit more bells and whistles on ours because we've been doing it a lot longer. We're investing a lot more in it. But man, you can easily just open the voice memo app on your phone, hit record, and just talk into your phone for 20 minutes. And if you can get maybe someone on Fiverr or Upwork to create you an intro and outro bed, that's going to be good enough for your listeners because the audio quality is going to be good enough to pass as a regular podcast. To your point, like we were talking before you went on the air, you were just hoping that there wasn't a lot of outside noise, someone cutting on a lawnmower or something like that. You don't want that in the background when you're recording, obviously. But if you're sitting in your car, sitting in your office, even just recording into your phone, that's going to be good enough audio quality to get a podcast started. And then as it gains some traction, as you get more into it, then you can invest a little bit more into it, get you a nicer microphone, start setting up in your computer, have a little studio space set up, but it's also just so much fun.
And for our listeners who are like, I'm not sure, just know I'm on over 350 odd, 360, 370 podcasts at this point. When I started, how I started was not by interviewing other people. My first 100 podcasts were just me talking. And I didn't know necessarily what to talk, but I had been a writer. So I went in and I looked at all of those blogs that I had been writing since 2012, and I chose topics. And if you listen and go back to my very early days, I will say that I would like to redo those podcasts because I'm pretty sure it sounds like I'm reading some of my content in a most eloquent way, of course, right? But there was a little bit of that going on too, because I wasn't comfortable yet. I wasn't comfortable just sitting and talking, and you're not expected to be comfortable right out of the bat. You just need to figure out what kind of, if you can put in place so that you can check it, do it, and move on and not get so stuck on yourself either. Because the other thing I did is I went in and while I was nicely reading those intros and those podcasts and the whole thing, I went back and I started editing myself. And that meant I edited out every and ah or mistake that I had. And then it didn't sound really real anymore because that's not how we all talk. So you'll get into a groove once you get used to doing this, where you'll certainly want to fix mistakes, but you're not going to go in and try to make yourself sound absolutely perfect. And that's the key.
Yeah. And, I, especially in our industry, they're such perfectionists. They want everything to be super polished, no mistakes, everything's perfect. And that's just not what your audience expects. I tell them all the time, they're not coming to your podcast expecting this NPR level of quality. They're coming for the information. They're coming to be just almost essentially a fly on the wall in the conversation that you're having, whether it's with someone else or just with yourself. And I like what you pointed out, about your first episodes, maybe not being as polished as they are now. Yeah, that's the point, right? The first time you do anything is not going to be nearly as good as the 100th time you do something. The first case you try isn't going to go as smoothly as the 10th case you try because you've gotten better at it, right? If you're, in show business, right, the first play that you act in, your acting is not going to be as good and believable as the 20th play that you're in. And so it's all about practicing that, and it doesn't have to be perfect on the first try. It doesn't ever have to be perfect. It's about sharing that knowledge and just being genuine with your audience.
And the other thing is, if you decide that you are not Mr. or Mrs. Podcaster, you don't want your own show, you don't want to host it, you want to interview other people, you don't want to talk yourself, but you like people asking you questions, you can also do exactly what we're doing today, and you can get yourself booked on other people's podcasts. And then you could actually leverage their content and take part of that transcript that they have. And there's so many different platforms that you can rip pretty much anything. Just ask your podcast host if it's okay first, but they're going to want you to help expand their message. And if you can find a way to mutually benefit both of you, where you're bringing more attention to their podcast and they're obviously giving you access to content that you can repurpose on your own platforms, you've also solved the problem too.
Yeah, and, we talked about expertise building, authority building. That's a great tool. You go on someone's podcast, people see, and then you share clips of that on your social media channels or in your email newsletter. People are going to think you're a big deal. They're not going to know, whether you're going on, Randy's podcast who has 10 listeners and it's just his mom on 10 different accounts versus a nationally known podcast. Most people aren't going to know the difference in that. And so you share that, you're sharing your expertise, you're in that element. People are going to really start associating you with that expertise that you're pointing out there.
And so how can our listeners find out more about you? So if they are interested in learning how you can work with them.
Absolutely. So you can go to spotlightbranding.com. That can show you all about the services that we provide. Our core focus is solo and small law firms, but we do not turn anyone away if we still think that there's a good fit there. So even if you're not a lawyer out there and you're listening and you still would like to learn more about us, I do encourage you to go to spotlightbranding.com, or at the very least, if you want to just learn more about the content that we're putting out, all of the resources that we have, you can go to spotlightinsider.com and check out the community there, get on our email list, and we'll send you just a ton of great content every week.
That's great. And so as our listeners are digesting everything that you've said, can you kind of give a high level, some of the things that you've learned that have made what you do for other people even better?
I would say, on a high level, I would say, just try something. I think a lot of times, especially with the people that we work with, they get so deep into the weeds, and I get it because I'm the same way. I want to plan everything out meticulously. I want to know, what happens in this situation. I want to know, how exactly the best way I should do something should be the first time I do it. And what happens a lot of the time is you spend so much time planning and thinking about doing something that you miss a ton of opportunities along the way. So if there's something out there, if there's a little itch, scratch it, try it, and improve along the way. But start something today, build that system, and then make refinements, improvements over time, rather than trying to roll out something that's 100% perfect from day one, because you're not really ever going to have something that's ever going to feel 100% perfect.
Totally agree with you. Well, I really appreciate your time today, John. Thanks for sharing all of your insights and how-tos to our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had fun.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I look forward to chatting with you this next week. And until then, if you do have any interest in how your brand can get interwoven into other people's stories through product placement and influencer marketing, please reach out. Happy to chat. And until then, have a great one.